Will you do anything? Can you do anything to close that pay gap?
I think it's going to take some bravery. I think it's going to take people who have bold ideas and willing to do the hard stuff. And having a conversation absolutely is something that has been a positive, because now people are talking about, this is a problem we need to fix. It has existed for so long and it's so hard to fix it. But I think we have good people in good places that are willing to take the hard stuff on. I really hope that we can get this done.
So we talked about how, or asked rather, if there is strain between EMS and firefighters. Is there tension there as it relates to this, as it relates to the pay gap?
I don't think it does. I don't see it. I don't see the strain. A lot of our firefighters have actually come into the system through EMS, so they've seen it firsthand, and they work shoulder to shoulder out in the field. So I think our firefighters support this idea. We're not proposing that we take anything away from firefighters. They have earned every penny of what they earn, and they should have more going forward. But we're just proposing that EMS be seen in the same light as firefighters and law enforcement.
Have you felt any tension yourself as someone who came up through EMS to lead the department? I don't say not having been a firefighter, but have you felt a certain amount of tension there yourself?
No, I think, it's been pretty good. I have been around a long time, so I'm pretty recognized throughout the department. And I was retired prior to this, but only for 3 years. So I came back pretty quickly.
Wow.
But there is a lot of pressure for me to try to create a better environment for EMS, because I know what it's like. I came up through the system. I've worked 4 jobs to try to pay a basic rent as I was growing up in the fire department on the EMS side. So I think EMS is looking to me as somebody who can really get their voice out there, and they feel very heard right now. So there is a little bit of pressure there to hope that we can solve some of their problems.
This year will mark 25 years since the September 11th attacks. What responsibility does the FDNY have to continue to ensure the lessons from 9/11 shape how the city prepares for emergencies today?
Yeah, we have all the responsibility in the world. We were on the front lines of that. I was actually a rescuer there at 9/11 as well. So I responded there. I'll tell you, there's some very serious lessons there, and I hope that the one lesson that we can always remember is that day, this city came together. It didn't matter who you were or what you believed. We were New Yorkers, and we came together to support the emergency services, support first responders. It was just a tragic day. The fire department alone lost 343 members of the fire department. Since then, we've lost over 430 to post 9/11 cancers and things of that such. So it is our responsibility to continue to remember what happened that day and teach the lessons that we learned about service. And I think an important lesson too, at least one I personally took away from, was the things that get you angry back then don't get me angry anymore. Every day is a gift. You never know when your day is going to come to an end and you're not going to get back to your family. Like so many families experienced that day. So if I have one more day, I'm going to make it a good one.
When you talk about things that make you angry, you mean in life or work?
In life, like in general. Like I just don't get shook anymore. If I always think if I wasn't here tomorrow, would this be important today? And if the answer is no, let's move on, right? Enjoy the days you have. It's a gift. Enjoy the people that surround you, your family, and just take every moment to make sure that they know that you love them and they love you.
Words to live by. Yeah. That was FDNY Commissioner Lillian Bonsignore. Commissioner, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
It's WNYC. Coming up, it's Marketplace. We'll be back with All Things Considered at 7 tonight. 75 degrees right now. We're going to see lows in the low 60s tonight. Pretty breezy with gusts up to 30 miles an hour. It's just about 6:30.
WNYC support comes from Carnegie Hall, presenting Heather Headley for one night only, performing selections from her Broadway career and R&B songbooks with special guest Javier Colon. May 7th, tickets at carnegiehall.org.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, helping protect small businesses with a variety of coverages like general liability, workers' compensation, and commercial auto. More at progressivecommercial.com.
It's a commodities kind of day today. We're going to go a little sideways, though. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager. Bitwarden is designed to manage passwords across devices and locations to secure sensitive information for business and personal accounts. Learn more at bitwarden.com. And by Drexel University, a research institution with an academic model that integrates classroom study with professional experience. Learn more about experiential education at drexel.edu. And by BMC. BMC helps customers worldwide run and modernize their businesses by automating, managing, and optimizing complex IT environments. Learn more at bmc.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. It is Tuesday today, the very last day of March 2026. Good as it always is to have you along, everybody. Commodities is where the opening stanzas of the program today find us. Not, though, the usual suspect, because fine, sure, oil, important, yes, but not the only globally critical item that is in the news. We're going to do a commodities 1-2 today, aluminum and then coal. Aluminum prices have been rising since the war started. Attacks on smelters, you've probably heard of those. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, you've definitely heard of that. Also, the rising cost of the energy that those smelters need. Prices are up around 10% since the start of the war. That's according to CRU Group. And that only adds to the 50% tariff that businesses have been paying on imported metals. So Marketplace's Justin Ho called some businesses that rely on aluminum to find out how they're being affected and what they're going to do about it.
Wolftooth Components is a bike parts manufacturer based near Minneapolis that makes hundreds of different products, including gears, pedals, and seat posts.
I would say aluminum's in probably 90% of our products.
That's co-owner Brendan Moore. He says ever since the war started, the price of the aluminum he buys has risen about 10%, even though the company mostly uses aluminum that's made in the U.S.
U.S. aluminum rises along with the broader commodity, and so U.S. prices have gone up too.
Thing is, Moore says there's not a lot he can do about that.
You know, you go to a restaurant and the lobster on the menu will say market rate. We don't get to say that on our components. Our components have a fixed price.
Moore says raising his prices is risky. It involves coordinating with dealers across the country, and it can tick off his customers. So instead, the company's just going to eat the cost and hold prices steady. Moore says he'd rather focus on the things he can control.
The things you can control are efficiency, how well we sell and market the product.
Businesses can't make plans around the recent aluminum price spike because we don't know how long this war is going to keep pushing up prices, says Vidya Mani, a visiting professor at Cornell University.
2 months down the line, I might be looking at a 50% increase. 4 months down the line, I might be looking at a 70% increase.
Plus, the war isn't only making aluminum more expensive, it's also causing actual shortages, says Ross Strachan with CRU Group.
In Japan and South Korea, some of the auto wheel manufacturers that make aluminum wheels have had to cut their production because they can't get the material from the Middle East.
That said, the U.S. has levied tariffs on imported aluminum ever since 2018, so many businesses can draw from their experiences with tariffs.
The new increases from the Iran war just falls right into our same playbook.
That's Chris Blench, CEO of Mavericks Manufacturing Partners, a company near San Diego that makes parts for nuclear power plants and the military. Blench says the company's playbook is simple.
Ever since the trade policies have been driving prices up on our metals and our raw material inputs, we've just been passing it on.
Blench says he knows the strategy will work, especially since everyone he's competing against is in the same boat. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Commodity number 2 in our hit parade today is a nod to the reality that one commodity's crisis is another's opportunity. Oil was down today, yes, but still above $100 a barrel. That's for both benchmarks, Brent crude and West Texas. Coal, though, is having a moment because even though a lot of countries have been trying to phase out their use of it, demand of late is going up in Asia in particular. And in the months and 4 days since the war started, the global coal benchmark has jumped more than 20%. Daniel Ackerman has more now on the coal comeback.
This is a story about coal, but first we have to talk about a different fuel.
This is actually more of a natural gas story.
Kenneth Gillingham, a professor of environmental economics at Yale University, reminds us that about a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas typically travels on tankers through the Strait of Hormuz.
The consumers of that, the people who buy it, tend to be in Asia.
Countries like China and India. They've been ramping up their use of natural gas in recent years, but these days coal is more readily available, and they still have plenty of coal-fired electricity plants hanging around, says Amin Mohseni Chiraglu, an energy economist at American University.
Given the current conditions, they can relatively easily go back to coal. There is a lot of capacity.
And he says that capacity is getting fired up once again to lessen the blow of rising gas prices.
It's just natural for those economies to try to switch back to coal as much as possible, of course.
Thailand and Taiwan may unretire coal plants that had been shuttered, while South Korea and Japan have suspended climate laws that cap coal burning at some power plants, says Kenneth Gillingham of Yale.
Maybe they'd run some of the time, they'd run occasionally. Now they're being run all the time.
He says the shift will be felt by the climate.
I think this is a big enough impact that we will see a little jump in emissions.
But this energy shock could have the opposite effect in the longer term. Daniel Cohan, a professor of environmental engineering at Rice University, says it could incentivize countries to invest more in renewables.
With a few years' time, that's when you can start building out more wind, solar, and batteries, because those are the cheapest forms of electricity available.
And because they'll make those countries less reliant on imported fuels entirely. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
Wall Street today, I regret to inform you that I'm going to have to take back the kind words I said yesterday about the markets and traders and the algorithms that drive things because, alas, it turns out they actually are an idiot. Stocks way up today, oil down just a bit, bonds basically unchanged. We will have the details when we do the numbers. The Trump administration has apparently decided, if you go by what the president and some of his cabinet officials say out loud, they've apparently decided that if maybe the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, that would be okay. The global economy would beg to differ. Crude prices we've touched on already. Dan Ackerman just talked about natural gas in Asia. And oh, by the way, gasoline here, $4.02 a gallon today, as I do not need to remind you. Now, on the theory that incentives matter, you might imagine that paying so much more at the pump would turn consumers' fancy toward EVs. And there is some evidence from the car buying site Edmunds that interest in electric vehicles has indeed ticked up the past few weeks. Enough, though, to make a difference? Marketplace's Henry Epp reports.
Before gas prices started climbing, the EV market entered this year in a tough spot. The Trump administration and Congress stripped away pretty much all the federal policies that had been supporting the expansion of electric vehicles. One of the big ones, tax credits, which up until last September knocked thousands of dollars off the price of many new and used EVs. In the couple months before those credits went away, electric car sales spiked, but then...
I like to refer to the time after that as like a hangover.
Alex Lawrence owns EV Auto, which sells used EVs at dealerships in Utah and Tennessee. For his business, the bad part of that hangover lasted about a month.
And then just slow uptick, kind of creeping back.
But the EV market as a whole, it's still kind of hungover. Sales slumped from 10% of the car market in the third quarter to under 6% in the fourth quarter, according to Kelley Blue Book. Plus, says Jessica Caldwell at Edmunds,
we heard automakers saying that they were going to delay plans or cancel EV programs altogether. So it sort of felt like a bleak market. It wasn't necessarily stopping, but it didn't feel great in the short term.
On top of the tax credit, the Trump administration also weakened fuel economy rules. So a lot of car makers cut back their EV manufacturing and turned their focus and money back toward gas-fueled SUVs and trucks.
And then all of a sudden gas prices spike. It's like, well, are you sure you want to do that?
Because those high prices at the pump could maybe lead more Americans to go electric, says Tim Levin, senior editor of the EV news publication Inside EVs.
I think it depends on how high gas prices go and how long they stay that way, right?
Even if gas prices stay high, EVs face a bunch of other points of friction, Levin says, that have always made them a tougher sell.
People are worried about charging infrastructure. Not everybody has a home charger at home, which is where you're going to get the best savings and the best convenience. People are worried about range. The cost of these EVs is pretty high.
But at least that last point appears to be changing a bit. Chevy and Nissan both released new models under $30,000 this year. Toyota and Subaru are also coming out with new models aimed to be a bit more affordable than previous generations of EVs. And the market for used EVs is growing fast, driven by many electric models coming off 3-year leases, Levin says.
Just by virtue of the fact that a lot more EVs were sold in the last few years than they were before, you have a lot of really high quality, really well-priced used EVs coming onto the market right now.
Dealership owner Alex Lawrence expects buyers will scoop these up. He says he's seen an uptick in sales the last few weeks. He's decided to bulk up his inventory of used EVs by about a third, and he plans to open 2 new dealerships this year.
And so I'm all in. I mean, I'm accelerator to the floor. We're not slowing down at all.
He's betting, he says, that gas prices will stay high for a while, and more people just won't want to deal with them anymore. I'm Henry App for Marketplace.
You know what the world needs right now? It needs a preeminent global flavor-focused company. That's what it needs. If you're not quite sure what that means, I'll explain. Unilever, a grocery giant that owns everything from Hellmann's mayonnaise to Dove soap, has sold off its food business to McCormick, the spices and sauces company, creating the aforementioned preeminent global flavor-focused company, or at least so reads the press release. Unilever has been selling off its food brands for a while now. It got rid of its ice cream holdings late last year, Ben & Jerry's, We Hardly Knew You. And today's move is another instance of giant conglomerates spinning off, selling off, and or acquiring familiar brands in those critical middle aisles of the local Piggly Wiggly. Marketplace's Kaylee Wells explains what's going on.
This move of consolidating and simplifying in the grocery industry has been going on for years now. Remember Procter & Gamble, the personal care brand, used to own Pringles and Folgers Coffee.
It is much more difficult to have a company that is focusing on both foods and non-foods.
Selling off the food brands makes sense, says Russell Zwanka, who directs the food marketing program at Western Michigan University, because soap and mayonnaise are 2 really different products to sell.
You can have an entirely different strategy for personal care and home care because, you're ingesting the product as opposed to applying it topically or cleaning your clothes.
And if Unilever was going to drop one, the food side just isn't growing much. Part of that is a change in consumer buying, says Ricky Volpe, an agribusiness professor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Folks have been increasingly moving towards more prepared and ready-to-eat foods, the perimeter of the supermarket.
Meaning we're spending more time in the fresh produce and deli sections, less time buying boxes of stuff. The other trend?
With especially younger Americans, we've seen brand loyalty eroded in a big way.
Meaning we still know Hellmann's mayonnaise, but we're not committed to buying it, especially if the generic store brand option is $1 cheaper. So, Volpe says, good idea for Unilever to get rid of it. But also a good idea for McCormick to pick it up, says Eric Chafee with Case Western Reserve University.
This is going to make them more of a player in regard to the food industry, meaning that they're going to be able to provide both spices and condiments at the same time.
For McCormick, adding mayonnaise is a pretty natural progression to their spice and sauce niche, says Bobby Gibbs with the consulting firm Oliver Wyman.
Because the scale that you're doing, in one of your products, you can actually apply others.
In the short term, this won't change much for consumers, but Volpe with Cal Poly says as more brands consolidate power in their corner of the market, they also have an easier time raising their prices. I'm Kaylee Wells for Marketplace.
Coming up.
You start to see your numbers and you're just like,
Dang it.
I hate it when that happens. First, though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 1,125 points, 2.5% today, 46,341. But come on, context is everything, right? The NASDAQ grew 795 points. That is 3.8%, 21,590. The S&P 500 added 184 points, 2.9%, 65 and 28. Henry was talking about EVs. Well, here you go. Tesla, which produces 4 car models, and Cybertruck, sped up 4 6/10%. Rivian, 4 models of truck there, climbed 3 9/10%. McCormick dropped 6 1/10%. Unilever decreased 7 3/10%. Condiment competitor Kraft Heinz, which, oh, by the by, also used to be 2 separate food giants, sauced up 1/10%. Bonds up, yield on the 10-year T-note down 4.32%. You're listening to Marketplace.
The Numbers is supported by Odoo.com, your entire business on one platform. Marketplace is supported by GEP, at the forefront of agentic procurement orchestration and autonomous supply chains. With GEP Smart Software, GEP Agentic AI, and strategy consulting, GEP works to help business optimize value and reduce risk. And by Bison Managed 401k, a service where advisors actively manage 401k accounts to help individuals meet retirement goals. The Bison Calculator is available at powermy401k.com. And by Solidigm, offering solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI with higher capacities, greater speed, and energy efficiency. Solidigm, AI data infrastructure built on a solid foundation. Learn more at storageforai.com.
The last time a Democrat won statewide in Texas was 1994, but now a war, rising prices, and President Trump's unpopular immigration policies have Republicans on the defensive.
When we look at all the fundamentals, every single one of those fundamentals points to wind in the Democrats' sail.
I'm Anthony Brooks. Will Texas really swing blue in this year's midterms, or is that still a Democratic mirage? That's on the next On Point.
Weeknights at 8 on WNYC.
WNYC receives support from Drexel University, an R1 research institution according to the Carnegie classification that is committed to fostering experiences for its students that positively impact society. More at drexel.edu.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. In the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered, a 4-astronaut crew is going on the first mission to send humans around the moon in more than 50 years. We'll check in with the crew as they train in Houston. We'll have all that and more at 7. Stay tuned.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. We have been talking for months, longer maybe, about the K-shaped economy we have now and the growing number of people on the lower leg of that K struggling to get by. A problem that's going to be compounded the longer this war goes on and the higher it drives household costs. Along those lines, there was a piece in the New York Times the other day about blood plasma donation centers and about the people who go there and what that says about this economy. Curtis Lee shared the byline. Curtis, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Do me a favor and tell me about the guy you start this piece with. Joseph Briseno is his name. His circumstances, if you would, and then where you came across him.
Yeah, so Joseph Briseno lives in the suburbs of Houston, and I met him outside of a CSL Plasma donation center. Joseph is 59 years old. He's works at a local waste disposal company. He earns about $50,000 a year, lives comfortably for the most part, but as we all know with this economy right now, the rising prices of gas and groceries, he needs some extra income, so that's why he was selling his blood plasma.
And this CSL lab, CSL, the name of the company, where is it? I mean, what's the local environs, if you will?
Yeah, it's very much in a suburban. If you think of suburbia in America, it's in this strip mall. There's an Orange Theory Fitness a few doors down from the CSL Plasma. And it very much does have the feel of suburban America.
And the thrust of this piece, or at least what I took away from it, is that, we've known about people selling plasma and people, in fact, in some days gone by, selling actual blood, but it's been people on the ragged edge of this economy. And what you've discovered, you and your co-author on this piece, the data guy, is that it's moving sort of up into suburban, as you said, middle class, doing okay people who are now not doing okay enough that they can't get away without selling their blood plasma.
Yeah, for years, selling plasma was known to be in mostly lower income inner city communities. But now over the past 2 decades, it's definitely moved out into more suburban middle class areas. We based our story kind of a bit off of a study by researchers at Washington University in St. Louis and the University of Colorado Boulder, who looked at plasma centers in America and basically found that the number of plasma centers more than doubled between 2014 and 2021. And then we took that data and we found that more and more of these plasma centers are moving out into the suburbs. And in particular, we went to the suburbs of Houston. We went to the suburbs called Webster, Texas. And in the last couple of years, there's been 2 plasma centers that have opened up. The CSL Plasma, where I met Joseph Briceño, and also there's a BioLife Plasma Services, which is a little more than a mile away. And we really just wanted to talk to Americans and see why they're selling their blood plasma right now.
We should just stipulate here, in case it isn't clear somehow in what we've been saying. It is net not a great thing that people have to sell their blood plasma to survive in this economy, no matter what part of the socioeconomic spectrum they're on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those things that, a lot of people I talked to felt this sense of shame. A lot of people wanted to be anonymous in these conversations. They weren't proud of having to sell their blood plasma. But then you talk to, patients that need certain medical therapies, and they're very grateful to these people who are donating and selling their plasma because it helps with their medicines. And the United States collects about 70% of the world's blood plasma, and it's only one of a handful of countries around the world that allow for the payment of plasma. So that's why it's become such a lucrative business in the United States.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out here that CSL, the company that runs one of the centers that you found these people in front of, it's a publicly traded for-profit Australian company,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's done really well over the years, but it's also a company that's looked to work on its profit margins, essentially. It's lowered donor fees, but it's very much a company that's doing well in this country.
Mr. Briceño and the other folks you talk to, how much are they getting when they sell their plasma?
It varies quite a bit how much people are receiving. Mr. Briceño was receiving on average $70 each visit, but it really varies based on, people's weight, the frequency they donate. Food and Drug Administration rules don't allow an individual to donate plasma more than twice a week. So a lot of people are doing the maximum, and the pay really does vary.
It is, just as a way to bring this home, it's a form of a safety net, right?
Oh, absolutely. I talked to researchers and academics who said that it's kind of a shadow safety net in a lot of ways. There's people who are, very much looking to supplement their income in this economy. They're driving for Uber, Lyft, but there's also this other area, which is plasma donation, and it's a way for them to really survive in this economy.
Curtis Lee, The New York Times. Curtis, thanks a lot. It's quite a piece.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thursday is the 1-year mark of President Trump's now struck down tariffs, the ones he just decided on all by himself under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. We are going to go back to some of the small business owners who have literally paid the price for the president's volatile trade policy. And we're going to start with Melissa Field. She's an interior designer, the founder of Shades of Grey Design Studio in San Antonio, Texas.
Big picture would be that it obviously has increased pricing, right, for our clients. Of course, I had to have my contract changed when the whole tariff thing came about. It used to be back in the day, we would be able to hold that pricing for 30 days. And now that's not the case anymore. And so we are now having to have this conversation with them saying, hey, this is the pricing that we're presenting to you now. However, from the time that you approve of the proposal to when we actually invoice you for the items, there might be some changes to the pricing. And so they actually have to sign off on that. And if they're not okay with that, then obviously we don't move forward with that client. it still makes me feel bad, to be honest with you. And, everybody's going to, look at it differently. But for me, I feel bad because I don't like, to have that sticker shock. So I was actually really surprised about the Supreme Court decision. And the first thing I thought of was, what about my clients that were impacted by that? Like, for instance, you're like, man, if it wasn't necessary for them to pay, then, that was just extra money they could have saved in their pocket, so to speak. I feel like I have adjusted where I needed to. And I've learned that. I didn't do it right away. And then I started, you start to see your numbers and you're just like, oh, dang it. I completely forgot because this whole tariff thing was new at the time. And so you end up eating some of those costs, right? And so I have since then kind of course corrected as I'm coming up with my fees and things like that. I am taking all of those tariffs and things into consideration. But then at the same time, I think we have to be balanced with it because, you never know what the next decision is going to be on these tariffs. Are they going to, I don't know that they're going to completely go away with this administration. And so I think we just kind of have to be flexible and just kind of ready for those different decisions and policies that come down. So I hope that it doesn't affect my bottom line as much because I have made sure that I was taking those things into account and making those adjustments as needed.
Melissa Fields, Shades of Grey Design Studio, San Antonio, Texas. More on tariffs in this economy 1 year later, tomorrow on the program.
Marketplace is supported by JLL, helping businesses achieve goals through commercial real estate. From market insights to talent retention to finding the right place for businesses to grow, JLL is there. JLL, see a brighter way. And by Odoo.com, offering integrated programs for sales, customer relationship management, inventory, and other business operations, designed to work together as a customizable software suite. Odoo, all your business on one platform.
This final note on the way out today, which I'll offer as sort of an amuse-bouche, if you will, ahead of Friday's March jobs report. We got the jolts for February today, the job openings and labor turnover survey. And the news is, well, it's been better. The number of job openings is down. The quits rate is down. That is the number of people quitting their jobs, just like it sounds. That's not great because when a labor market is really good, people quit pretty easily, thinking it'll be a cinch to get a new job. The number of hires was down as well. Jordan Manji, Sunil Maharaj, Janet Wynn, Olga Oxman, and Virginia K. Smith are the digital team around here. I'm Kai Risdall. We will see you tomorrow, everybody. This is 8 p.m.